Hello interwebs, I hope you're all doing well, truly and sincerely, especially right now, considering what my morning just was. And I'll talk about that in a little bit, but I have to talk about something else first. So, there's been a lot of discourse online that I myself jumped into with my last video on this channel surrounding people bullying people playing the wizarding game on Twitch. There's been a lot of articles written up about it, about transgender people bullying people who are playing the wizarding game, saying that they're bad people, making them cry, making them feel bad, calling them transphobic, calling them bigots, things like that. That's been basically what the discourse has been going on right now. And I want to start off by being very, very clear, considering there are people that have literally stated that jessiegender has been supporting people going out and bullying people. I've seen that in a lot of comments and Twitter feeds and things like that. Don't bully people. Bullying is wrong. Harassment is wrong. Like I said in my last video, we don't harass people in the name of, fighting for transgender people. We fight people, we push back against people, we call out people, we do all of those things, but harassing people isn't the right thing to do. Oh, and to be very, very clear, since I saw people saying this on other videos, that is not me saying when they go low, we go high. We use any means necessary to fight back against oppressors and those who would harm us and actual bigots. But to make the distinction against using that as a tool to fight back versus harassment is the distinction that I'm making. That being said, though, I do really feel like people are just calling transgender people bullies and harassers without actually checking in on what's been going on in a lot of those streams where people are supposedly crying, getting upset, being called transphobic bigots for playing the wizarding game. Because if you actually go and watch a lot of those videos, what you will end up finding is that people in these streamers' chats are literally just pointing out, hey, this game is made by a transphobe. I don't really feel comfortable that you're playing it. Maybe play another game, which is something I also spoke about in my last video, that you could easily play another game. You don't actually owe this game your time and attention, especially at a time where trans rights and trans people are under attack. And I'll talk a little bit more in just a moment about that element of these things too, but I want to keep going on this specific point around the bullying. Because you see, when people pointed this out, this is when streamers got upset, started crying, saying you're calling me a bigot, you're calling me a terrible person. And this is also a lot of what I see people saying on my take that I did on my J.K. Rowling video, or the last video that I did, where people are saying like, oh, Jessie, this take of you saying that people are bad people for playing the Harry Potter game is really wrong and over the top and just ridiculous and making you lose allies and things like that. But if you actually go and listen to what trans people said, and this is what I said, quite literally, is that I didn't call anybody a bad person for playing Harry Potter. I didn't say that they were bad people, like core inherent, like they were some evil person just deep down inside waiting to be unleashed and the Harry Potter game finally announced it to the world. No, what I did say is don't proclaim that you are an ally for trans people while buying a game that does support an economy of harming us. And that is a clear distinction. I am not saying you are a core evil bad person. What I am saying is that you are contributing to a system that harms transgender people quite directly. And you have to wrestle with this cognitive dissonance that says, oh, I support trans people, but I might be directly contributing to a system and a person and the person's attention economy and her platform that is directly harming trans people. And I'm not going to go over, for the people who are going to leave in the comments, what did J.K. Rowling say wrong? I've talked about that numerous times. Go check out those videos. J.K. Rowling is an anti-trans bigot who is actively harming the trans community. And if you play her game, you're supporting her attention platform and enabling her to do more. So when you're playing the game, people have this cognitive dissonance between understanding that trans people are marginalized, wanting to help trans people, but also having to wrestle with the fact that they might be contributing to an economy of hate. And when their audiences push back and say, hey, this isn't the right way to go, or this is what you're contributing to, they have to be confronted with that cognitive dissonance. That sort of thing in their head of being like, well, I'm not a bad person, but I might have contributed to a bad system. And when that cognitive dissonance occurs, people need to resolve it. And the way that people will typically resolve it is by trying not to put the moral baggage upon themselves. And this is an understandable thing. I get it. We don't want to view ourselves as bad people because no one is. People aren't bad or good. Even I think of like the worst person in the world. We could say they're bad and it's sometimes helpful to call them bad, but at the end of the day, people are people. And to moralize about like the inherent evilness or goodness of people, I think is trying to undermine that we all exist within systems that push us in ways or another. And that's not to say that we don't have responsibility for actions. We very much do. But it is not talking about there's this core essential morality within a person. We talk about actions being harmful. So when people have to face this cognitive dissonance by people telling them this, they get upset because they have to wrestle with this fact that they are imperfect people imperfectly living in a world, and have to resolve that cognitive dissonance. And the way they typically will is not to, introspect, because our culture tells us not to introspect. It tells us not to sit with these things. It tells us to have an immediate reaction. The immediate reaction will be to lash out at the people making you uncomfortable in the moment. And that will generally be transgender people and our allies pointing out to you that what you're doing is contributing to harm. And so they will start attacking and calling these people pointing this out harassers, bulliers, attackers. And that becomes the narrative, because it's then, oh, trans people are bullying me because they made me cry. But really what's happening, what's really making you cry, is trying to resolve this cognitive dissonance in your head about wanting to help trans people, but understanding that we live in a system that is going to make you contribute to anti-transgender harm quite directly. And your desire to play a very popular game that should be normalized in our society. I wish everyone could play the Wizarding game without having wrestling with moral decisions. We shouldn't have to deal with that. And people want to just focus on that because they aren't trans. They don't have to deal with this stuff directly. Or Jewish, by the way. I want to point out that the game also has anti-Semitic tropes. So there's that as well. And so they don't want to deal or think about that. So they lash at the people making them uncomfortable, transgender people and marginalized people around them. But we're just the ones making you uncomfortable because we're in the room telling you what's going on. And you don't want to face that. And unfortunately, it creates the narrative that trans people are bullies and harassers. And that is something that I spoke about in my last video that the right wing uses very directly to vilify transgender people. One of the most common narratives around anti-transgender bigots talking about trans people is that trans people are bullies and harassers and trying to control you and what you do, that we're trying to destroy free speech, that, oh my God, we can't talk in this society. And also, there's this cabal of people above you, the mysterious they, often run by transes, and guess what? Jewish folks, again, their narrative, that's not what I'm saying, just being very clear, that they will sort of take that narrative and be like, oh, they're trying to control you and push this sort of idea into society.
And they canceled her because she said in an interview, and this is not exactly what she said, but effectually, she said gender was a fact. And then the trans community got mad as shit. They started calling her a TERF. I didn't even know what that was. But I know that trans people make up words to win arguments.
The way that you can tell who holds all the power in a society is by who you can't make fun of, right?
That's right. So his speech is violence, their violence is speech. See how that works? What's interesting is that the number of people who really care about this issue enough to assault someone over it is tiny. And yet they have disproportionate power. 350 million people in the country, maybe 1,100 feel that way, but they're running everything. Why is that?
And so they see all of this stuff going on around this Harry Potter game and this cognitive dissonance going on, and they're like, oh, great, this is perfect. We can use this to vilify trans people more, which is why you see people like Ben Shapiro quite literally using the words of Hassan to frame transgender people as the bullies.
In their reviews, Jessie Earl, one trans YouTuber and writer, tweeted in December that unlike consuming previously owned Harry Potter books or films, purchasing Hogwarts Legacy while Rowling is, quote, using her ongoing platform to target and also justify her continued targeting of trans people is hateful to trans people. Rowling responded, accusing her of pure think. Some streamers on Amazon-owned Twitch platforms, including Will Overguard and Nicotine, have publicly voiced opposition to the game. And the idea here is that we have to make sure that no one engages in a game because the creator of the game does not agree with you on a very radical point of view. Okay, it's kind of an amazing thing to go on your own show and then just admit that you're a coward and that you won't say the thing because you're so afraid of your own fan base. I mean, he literally said the only reason he's not playing is because people who quote chirp are basically bullying him into not playing the game.
And they'll also wield things like, oh, they added a token transgender character to the game to try to obfuscate the fact that this game, again, does support J.K. Rowling's continued attention platform, and the fact that there's been reports surrounding behind the scenes of the game that character was literally only added to try to just head off anti-transgender criticisms and not with an earnest desire to include transgender people.
All of this, despite the fact, by the way, that apparently there is a transgender character in the game. I'm not kidding you. Apparently, Hogwarts Legacy actually does have a transgender character named Serona Ryan, is according to Forbes. That, by the way, would be the middle managers at Warner Brothers deciding that in order to avoid the flack, they're simply going to give in to the woke left. But Serona is a witch who runs a tavern in Hogsmeade Village, an NPC that the player can speak to. Serona doesn't outright say she is a trans woman, but she implies it through her dialogue when she talks about her old classmates and says, "Took them a second to realize I was actually a witch, not a wizard." Now, is that going to buy off the woke left? Of course it's not going to buy off the woke left.
Oh my god, Ben Shapiro is right. I should feel included because there's a character that the player can speak to. They can speak to a trans person for a whole 5 seconds, and in those 5 seconds, the character quite literally states, "Hey, I'm transgender. Did you know? I'm transgender. I wanted you to be very aware that I'm transgender." Oh, I feel so represented because, that's how I like my representation. And they'll also use the "you need to support the devs" argument as well, ignoring the fact that it is not people's job to support devs with buying a game. We don't owe devs our money. That is their employer's job to pay and protect the devs. I spoke about that in my J.K. Rowling video. But again, it goes all to framing transgender people as the harassers and targets of harm, as I spoke about weeks ago before this game even came out.
And again, I'm not saying that Hassan is saying this. In fact, I think Hassan has gone on record to be very clear that that's not the case, but that's the narrative that is being used around people like him and other streamers by the right wing to vilify transgender people, when in actuality, that's not the case. And again, I'm sure there's some transgender people being assholes and bullies, and I do not want to underplay that. Those things are absolutely wrong and horrible. But I am a little bit more forgiving right now of transgender people who are angry and upset and hurt at the moment because of how much we've had to deal with, actually. People are upset that streamers are getting quote-unquote harassed when they're just dealing with cognitive dissonance. Let me tell you what my day has been. I woke up this morning having to deal with deleting endless amounts of hate comments, death threats, people telling me to kill myself, people telling me that I'm, doing a bad job fighting for the transgender community. And I'm not saying that I'm perfect, but it hurts to try my best right now to fight for this community. When I see this thing around the stupid fucking game being used as, I don't want to overblow it, but it really feels like another Gamergate type of situation that's being used to galvanize right-wing people into mobilizing against a marginalized group. I've had to deal with all of this shit right now. And being honest, it hurts, but I get through, and I'm doing okay, and I have plenty of friends that are caring for me, and I want you to all know that I am okay in that sense. It sucks and it hurts, and I'm certainly going to have a lot to talk about with my therapist over the next few weeks, but I'm getting through. But what kills me most is that there are transgender kids out there who are dealing with everything that I'm dealing with and don't know how beautiful they are. I am older. I have been out as a trans person. No one's going to ever make me feel bad for being trans, ever in my life. I have that confidence in myself because I know who I am, and I know how beautiful and amazing and cool of a person that I am. And I'm not trying to aggrandize myself. I'm imperfect, but I know I like who I am. And trans kids haven't had the chance to discover that yet. And they're dealing with this. They're seeing their friends playing the wizarding game and made to feel like they don't matter because their friends care more for their entertainment than them. They see a world vilifying transgender people as harassers for trying to say the basic thing of, please don't play a game that directly harms us. How little so much society sometimes cares. That hurts, and that scares me that trans kids are facing that right now. It tears me up inside. And if you are a trans youth right now listening to this, know that you are beautiful and that you are amazing and you kick ass. And society can be cruel and mean sometimes. And we live in a society that makes us all contribute to harm. Not to downplay people willfully ignoring that fact, that they can do things within that system. But know that you are amazing. So me dealing with all of that is why my sympathy is very, very low for the people who are upset that they're being bullied for playing the wizarding game. And like I've said, bullying is wrong and people shouldn't do it, but you made a choice to play the wizarding game. And I'm not saying that it's right that you get harassed or bullied, but I also think most of you probably aren't. You're just dealing with cognitive dissonance. And transgender people are literally getting death threats right now for being trans, for existing, for being alive. Understand that what you are facing and dealing with right now for playing a wizarding game, a choice that you could choose not to do, is nothing compared to what trans people are facing right now, have been facing, will face. And I'm not saying that you deserve to be harassed if you play the wizarding game. You shouldn't be. But understand that that is but a taste of what trans people get every day. and maybe focus on that. And to those of you who will use the argument, oh, there's no ethical consumption under capitalism, so play the wizarding game. It's like, no, ethical consumption under capitalism is not something to say that we can do whatever that we want, fuck it. What it is to say is we need to be aware that we all contribute to systems and that cause harm, and that we need to understand that we're never going to move through this world perfectly. But we do have control over some of our choices. We can try to be self-conscious of how much harm that we do. It's not a thing to say, fuck it, I don't care. It's a thing to say, be aware so you can try to do your best. And playing the wizarding game and then calling transgender people harassers is not your best. And look, if you want to play the wizarding game, that's fine. I'm not telling you not to. Like I said, I said this in my J.K. Rowling video. I'm not demanding what you do. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm telling you how I feel about your actions. So play the wizarding game if you want. Please do. Go ahead. But own it. Own what it is. Own the fact that you are contributing to a woman who is causing harm to the transgender community. If you do that, then I will at least have some modicum of respect for you. The people who send me death threats and say, I'm playing the Harry Potter game, go fuck yourself, tranny. Those people I at least have some level of respect for, in the sense that they at least own their choices. They're terrible, horrible, disgusting human beings, but they know it. They're aware of it. They gleefully revel in it. And I'm not here to, again, I won't want to come across as like, go fuck yourself if you play the wizarding game. I just want you to recognize that if you're playing it, you are contributing to harm, and be aware of that fact. Just be aware of it. And I'm not saying that you're a terrible person. I'm not saying you're a bad person. And I'm not saying that maybe down the line you won't show up for transgender people. I hope you do. I really want you to. And maybe at the end of the day, this is all insignificant to you, and you'll be the person that's at the front of the line fighting for transgender people. But I have to question that. I have to question whether you will do that if you're not even willing to acknowledge the systems of harm that are causing harm to trans people right now. And maybe I'm wrong, but I need people to wrestle and understand that, because if you don't, then I really am worried about when when things get harder for trans people, because they will. I wonder whether you'll understand why you need to be there, why you need to show up for us. You look at things in history like the growing of Nazis in Germany. That didn't just happen overnight. It was a long battle of framing transgender people, Jewish people, many other marginalized groups that were harmed in the Holocaust. It was a long time of building to that. And hopefully things don't get that dark, but I want you to understand that transgender people feel that. We are trying our best to be like, no, we have hope, we're fighting for the future, but we are also just like, oh, we see this path ahead of us right now. It's not some scary, mystical thing that happened in the distant past with the over-the-top evil villain of Hitler. Hitler was a real dude. He existed, and these things happened. And they can happen again. And hopefully they don't. But know that transgender people and many other groups, like Jewish folks, we see that that path can recreate itself. And you need to understand that. And if you think I'm being hyperbolic when I say that, Jessie, you're being ridiculous and over the top, just remember that quite literally just a few weeks ago, former President Donald Trump, the former most powerful man in the world, released a video that announced that if he got reelected, he was essentially going to do a transgender genocide. That's not hyperbolic. That's literally what the man is calling for, and he literally was and could possibly be the most powerful man in the world again.
The left-wing gender insanity being pushed on our children is an act of child abuse. Very simple. Here's my plan to stop the chemical, physical, and emotional mutilation of our youth.
And for those of you saying like, oh, well, he's a joke, he's not going to get reelected again. Number one, that's what we said the first time. Number two, maybe you're all right. He is a joke of a man. But, I bet you that the person right behind him, Ron DeSantis, or whatever ghoul gets the nomination, will probably not be much further behind him in terms of transgender issues. In fact, some might even say they might likely be ahead and actually smarter about it than that joke of a man. So no, I don't think I'm being hyperbolic, and it's frustrating when I see situations like these with this game being used to make people who are supposed to be trans supportive start to vilify transgender people because they don't ever want to wrestle with the fact that maybe they might contribute to harm. And so instead of understanding that, they push back against transgender people, and it pushes everyone, right and left and whatever, to be further against transgender people. It's how these systems work. It's what it wants you to do. So it really, really scares and frustrates me. All of this is why I'm really, really upset at the constant disinformation campaign about trans people generally that these campaigns are stoked upon, as well as about me specifically. I keep seeing people pop up in comments and DMs on Twitter saying, Jessiegender is calling people who play Hogwarts Legacy a bad person, or Jessiegender is encouraging people to bully other streamers. That's right-wing disinformation around transgender people. That's clearly what it is. If you watched any of my content, I know 3.5-hour videos are long. I'm making Lord of the Rings every week. It's frustrating for me too sometimes. But I take pains in those videos to make very, very clear that that is not what I'm saying and not what I'm doing, and make those distinctions very, very clear, which is why those videos are so long. They are so long because I feel like I have to have very clear points every single time and overemphasize things, and even then people will still misunderstand me, intentionally so, to create a narrative around transgender people. So if you see people out there saying Jessiegender is encouraging bullying, Jessiegender is telling people that they're bad people if they play Hogwarts Legacy, it's utter nonsense and BS. It is never what I said. It's never what I told people to tell other people to do. But that's what people wish to say about transgender people. It's how they wish to frame us. It's quite literally how these disinformation campaigns get started, by framing transgender people as the bullies coming to harass and attack you and trying to control what you do or say. In moments like this, inconsequential in the larger scheme of things compared to all the other stuff going on with transgender people right now, but you also need to recognize what's going on right now. And you need to wrestle with it. Truly, truly wrestle with it inside your heart. Because if you don't, how can I count on you to understand when it really does matter? And maybe I'm wrong. I want to be wrong. Please, 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 please let me know I'm wrong. But that's just what I'm feeling right now. So I'm expressing to you as an imperfect human being what I'm feeling and dealing with and wrestling with right now. So, and what trans kids are wrestling with now. Anyways, I didn't have a script for this, so I probably said something stupid and dumb and people will put it out in the comments. But I just feel like I need to say something. And it's really frustrating. It's really just frustrating to see comments being like, this isn't the take, bro. Or whatever. Maybe I'm fucking up. Maybe I'm getting it wrong, but I'm trying. I hope you all understand I'm trying. Trying to fight. Trying to care. I know there's a better world that we can make. I know there's a better world that we will make. And I want to fight for it so badly. And that's what I'm trying to do. Maybe I'm doing it wrong, but it's what I want. And it's what I want everyone out there to know. There is a better world that we can make. There's a better world that we will make. The only question is, how long will it take to get there? But we will make it. All right. Love you all. I'm gonna go get some breakfast.